Hello, everyone. Thank you for attending our PRSSA event with Garry Morris. We are super excited to have Garry with us tonight to talk a little bit about resumes. Really, I think he's going to talk about a lot of different career services stuff. I hope so, because career services offers so much to students, and you can, get anything you need done there. So I'm really excited for tonight. I'm going to drop the attendance right in the chat. If you have any questions throughout, you can drop those in the chat. If you are not the speaker, if you wouldn't mind muting yourselves just so we don't have any interference, that'd be much appreciated. I am Kayla, I'm the president, and I'm going to let the rest of my e-board introduce themselves.
My name is John Fichter. I'm the vice president, and I'll pass it over to Sonia.
Hi, I'm Sonia Kordovich, and I am the secretary for PRSSA, and I'm a junior public relations major.
So I think that we are missing a couple e-board members tonight, but I'm sure they will hop on. Again, I dropped the attendance in the chat. If you have any questions, you can drop them in the chat or save them for the end. And I'm going to pass it to our speaker, Garry Morris.
All right. Thank you very much. How's everybody doing tonight? All right, getting through the semester. Very good, very good. Yep. We were talking before you folks got on about the one thing employers are going to wonder about at the end of this pandemic, or when things start to loosen up and we go back to, whatever the next version of normal is. And I think at least one of the big questions they're going to ask is, what did you do during this pandemic? And, I was chit-chatting with Kayla, and she's been doing so much, and I work with a lot of different groups and clubs and organizations, departments, administrators on campus. And it seems like everybody knows who she is because she's so out there. And so every discussion about student leaders and getting someone involved, and we need a speaker for whatever, everybody seems to know her, which is probably the perfect position you want to be in. So she's been a great role model from a student leadership point of view. So all of you continue to stay involved, do things, continue to make connections. And when things start to lift off, and I think they will relatively soon, I think you'll be in much better shape. So I was asked to come in to talk about resumes. And resumes, it's one of those things that it's kind of connected to everything else, because you can't just write a good resume. You have to write a resume with a few things in mind that have nothing to do with the resume if you really want to do it right. And so I'll go over a few basics. Feel free to throw questions in the chat. Feel free to interrupt me along the way. Feel free to, like, dude, I already know this, move it on to the next topic or whatever. I want to make this as useful as I can without droning on too much. The first thing you want to do is show up, be seen, be present, get out there. It's one of the things that can tend to kind of take a back seat during a time like this. And I'm an old guy, trust me, I'm like getting older than dirt at this point. I have seen society crumble to the ground like 5 times in my lifetime, right? I've seen economic crashes, I've seen .com bubbles burst, I've seen housing crisis. I was on I saw a war or 2 or 3, right? So everything just kind of seems like it'll never be okay. And then of course it always is. So continue to stay plugged in, show up to stuff like this and last week's speaker and the previous week's speaker. Stay connected to people like Joe that can really make a big, big difference in your life. Continue to stay plugged in, show up, be seen, raise your hand, sit in the front, so to speak. Those are the students who will come out of this just fine. All right, enough of that philosophical stuff. Yeah, I guess you called it. I just want to make one point that, our career office pretty much went virtual in every single way. We are staffing the campus. We're there every day, one way or the other, on a reduced level. So if you were to walk in the campus, like tomorrow, you're going to find us in there. And that's okay. We're there, but we're also mostly online because that's where all of you folks are. So everything we do, we now do online. just like the rest of the world. And we hit that stride about 10 days after we went remote in March. We had completely moved our entire operation to a virtual environment. And I've been there ever since, kind of honing that. So if you want to attend an event, if you want to make an appointment, if you need help with a resume, cover letter, grad school essay, job search, internship search, anything we do, you connect with us online. And it's starting to get a little weird because of, seeing you face to face is now the current version of, like, I see people in real life now. Like we don't even think real life means like real life. So it's all a little weird, but we'll get through it. There is an elephant in the room here that I just want to kind of toss out here. And that is, you probably think the world's on fire. And it kind of is at the moment. But as I mentioned before, fires go out. And then you want to be the person who is more qualified when the fire goes out than when you were when it caught fire. And there are ways to do that. Probably you've already figured out lots of ways to do that. I'll talk about a couple more. Joe is great to know, to suggest for just different activities and professional development kinds of avenues and platforms. You always want to keep moving forward, even in a time like this, because if you keep moving forward and the rest of your competition slows or stands still, you just put distance between you and everybody else. And that is the name of the game and everything related to being competitive out there in the job market. So resumes. Let's talk about a key concept that I'm hoping most of you sort of have a sense of at this point, but I kind of want to drive this home a little bit. There is a lot to be said about the match between what your future will demand of you and what you actually will give your future. And I've literally spoken with hundreds of students in the past 4 or 5 days on this topic because it's that important. What do you think? Does anybody play sports here? Does anybody play, have you ever played sports? Basketball, volleyball? Okay, Carly's nodding. She's played some sports. What have you played, Carly?
Well, I was cheerleader, so that counts, right?
Cheerleader, totally counts. Yeah. Yep. And who else was, Sonia?
Yes, I was a cheerleader for 10 years.
Whoa, wow. You probably don't want to give us a 2, 4, 6, 8. Who do we, yeah, whatever. Yeah. All right, we won't make you do that. Isabella, you played sports?
Yeah, I played volleyball.
Played volleyball, nice. What, so volleyball, did you have a specific position you played?
Yeah, I was outside.
Outside. See, I asked that question like I would have a clue of even understanding the answer when it came.
Basically, they're like, I was just outside, so I was spiker. I was basically the spiker.
Oh, you were the spiker. Okay. Were you any good, Isabella?
I was the captain in my high school.
Oh, well, I'm guessing you were probably pretty good.
I mean,
So,
you don't have to be that good to be a captain. You just have to lead.
okay, cool. So, all right. So I'm going to set the ball. You're going to go up and you're going to spike, and you have some sense of where that ball's going, I assume?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, once you grow up with it and once you learn about the sport more, it's like a gut feeling. It's like a timing in your gut. It's just
okay.
And then you just know exactly when. But some people do it on like a 1, 2, 3 step or 1, 2, 3, 4 step count.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're like going so far over my head right now.
Sorry.
So you jump up, you hit the ball, you're trying to hit a piece of the court, ideally where nobody else is, right? And did you ever do that?
Yeah, I mean, you're supposed to.
I mean, that's the point, right? So what happens if I put you on a volleyball court and I blindfold you and I turn you around in circles 10 times blindfolded, let you stop in some random direction, and I'm just going to set the ball now and say, yeah, spike it. What happens?
Well, then I won't know where the ball is.
Well, how come?
Well, because you spun me around and then I'll be dizzy. So I won't really pinpoint where the ball is.
And you're blindfolded. That doesn't hurt.
Too.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like if you put me in an exact spot where I usually play and then you tell me when the ball is set, then I'll like kind of have an idea of where it is. But if you turn me around and then you have me blindfolded, I can't guarantee you anything.
Yeah, chances it's going to be a miracle if you hit anything close to what you're trying to hit, right?
Very slim chance.
So that's my super, super cheesy way of introducing a concept. Isabella is only going to hit it if she can see it. You can only hit a target if you can see the target, unless you're like stupid, crazy lucky, right? That could happen. It's the same thing with developing a resume. A resume, you don't just kind of put this together and you just write it with no thought of what you want to do with it. Because a lot of times, sometimes, what you've done, nobody really cares about. So you've got to do it in some context. You've got to figure out, let's say you're going for an internship or a job. Your first job in writing a great resume, excuse me, is figuring out what that internship supervisor or that HR manager wants you to bring to the table. It's about them, frankly. It's about what they want, because they don't know you, unless of course you know Joe and they know Joe, and then Joe just works his magic, right? But they really don't know you. It's a piece of paper at that point. So you don't get really any points unless it's on your paper. And knowing what they want is the first step in giving them what they want. Otherwise, what you write may or may not hit the target. It's kind of a simple equation. So how do you, if you're going to think about targeting this document in a specific direction, what do you think is important to employers? And you can toss it out. You can throw something in the chat box. If you're silent for 7 or more seconds, I'll just start listing things. But what do you think employers want from you guys?
Would it be skill set and experience?
Yeah, it would very much be skill set and experience. Yep. Do you think they're looking for like a certain type of person? Like, you all seem very, very kind and friendly. But would they be looking for like, well, that person's kind of grumpy, they'll fit in well here? Or, like personality characteristics, they might be looking for someone who seems collaborative, seems friendly, maybe outgoing, in addition to skill sets that we could probably identify. So yeah, I think there is a certain set of credentials people are looking for. And figuring that out ahead of time can be really, really important. So what's the education level they want? What kind of experience are they looking for? What kind of skill set do they need? And then what kind of a person are they looking for? And this is definable. This is knowable. You can figure this out. And then this, of course, becomes the target you shoot for. If you don't hit this, you're probably not going to get whatever you're applying for, to be honest with you, because there's a lot of candidates, less jobs than candidates. They're going to hire the best person who articulates their value relative to what they're looking for, right? So how would you figure this out? Any ideas? Like, okay, so we have to develop that target. How do you even go about knowing what people are looking for out there?
I would say the position description might give you a few keys as to what they're looking for.
Yeah, that's a great start. That's going to be very specific. Any other ideas?
Maybe research about the company.
Bingo. Those are the top 2 things I've got listed in the next slide. You guys are on the ball. So let's take a look. So yeah, job description. They're going to tell you what they're looking for. And yeah, you can go ahead and just highlight all of those things that are priorities and most relevant, and kind of figure that out. Their website, the company will tell you the company culture. Most websites of most organizations, they're going to tell you what they think about their own people. You know, our people are hardworking, our people are collaborative, our people are results oriented, detail oriented, whatever it is, whether it's true or not, they're at least going to tell you what they hope their people are. And so take note of those things, and then that needs to shine through somehow in your candidacy. Could be resume, could be cover letter, could be your digital presence online, whether it's LinkedIn or some other channel. It's definitely during the interview, but you've got to figure out what they want and then give it to them at some point along the way. It's kind of important to wrap as much of that into like a resume and a cover letter as possible, because if they don't see it there, you might not get to stage 2 to articulate your value in an interview or something. Connecting with people who work for the organization can be a great source of information. It can also be a great way to make a contact with that organization. If you play it right and you think there's an opportunity there, while you're asking for, hey, can you tell me what it's like to work for this place? You kind of jam in, I'm really interested in this position. And maybe you can slide that conversation around enough to they say, oh, my brother is the hiring manager over there. I'm just going to tell him to hire you, right? That'd be ideal. So you just you never know what comes out of those crazy conversations with people. Professional associations, I'm guessing you folks belong to PRSSA. Any other professional associations you belong to?
American Marketing Association.
Right. Yep.
Media Summit.
Yeah. Nice.
Phi Beta Lambda.
Okay. Perfect. Perfect. You'll want to try to belong to as many as you can that are relevant and helpful. A lot of times you can join as a student for free or super reduced. And as you know, on those websites, there's all kinds of information. Generally, those professional associations have a careers section in the upper menu. Really quickly, you can get to that. And they'll tell you all kinds of career paths, skills needed, credentials needed, how to kind of build your skills up. Lots of information there that'll help you understand what your future looks like so you can better define the target. And then you can better hit that target with your resume. Of course, there's online things like, the occupational handbook. You can talk to a career expert over in Career Central. Faculty are a great source. I'd be picking Joe's brain all day long. He's just a wealth of information. Family, you name it. Anything out there that can give you information as to what your future looks like, that helps you further define it, that helps you hit it. If you hit the center of that target, people are going to have a hard time saying no, because you would not believe the lack of talent out there. Seriously, you would not believe the lack of talent out there. If you do this right, you can surpass a lot of people who, frankly, are more qualified than you are, which is great. Little known secret, in the job search, you don't have to be the best person to get the job. You just have to convince the employer you're the best person. And I'm probably living proof of that. When I arrived at Oswego for a long time ago, a couple of years before you were born, probably, it was a national search. I was up against all kinds of great people. And no doubt, there's no way. I was pretty good, but there's no way I was the best person in that national search. So it was really, I was born in '93, thanks. That's awesome. 3 years before I started here, awesome. But I didn't have to be the best person, and I knew that. I just had to convince SUNY Oswego I was the best person, which of course I did. Yep, good comments. All right, just want to check the chat box, make sure. Yep, perfect. Yeah, love that. Born in '93. I am older than dirt. Okay, so here are some suggestions of where you can start to gather enough information so you can define this target and then hit it straight on. I'm going to show you a couple of examples of what this looks like. And it'll jump all over the map here a little bit, but the concept is exactly the same. I don't care if you're applying to McDonald's, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ogilvy, Google, it doesn't matter. The concept is the same. They are looking for a certain set of credentials. If you can give it to them better than anybody else, it's yours. It's yours. All right, let me just toss this up here. So I worked with a student, this has very little to do with PR, but it's a cool example. Worked with a student, first semester freshman student, wanted to work for their Campanario Biological Field Station in Costa Rica. Does that look like a place you'd want to spend your summer? Holy cow. So I said, okay, this sounds cool. Let's, yeah, I'll help you put a resume together for that. And me being a career professional, I said, we need a job description. Can you get me what they're looking for? Because that's going to be kind of important how you put your resume together. So he sent me the job description and the resume that he planned on using. And so I took a look at the job description, and you know, it's pretty detailed, but it's way out there on an island off Costa Rica. Like, you only get there by boat. There, your only transport around the island is by foot. No electricity. It's ecotourism to the nth degree. It's right up this kid's alley. So they need somebody with biology, ecology, construction, first aid, teaching experience, environmental education, maintenance. Got to be flexible. Got to be able to work long, weird hours. Good physical health. Got to be able to swim. Need to get along in Spanish. Independent travel is critical. The self-starter, task-oriented, these are the key components of this job. If he doesn't give this place these components, never going to happen. So we looked at his resume, and you know, I looked at the resume for about 2.5 seconds, and I said, Mike, this is never ever gonna work. Not in 1,000 years are they gonna take you. For one thing, you're 17 and a half, and they say you have to be 21 and either in college or a grad student, right? So right off the top, but we're not going to let that stop us. Let's see if there's other things we can work with here. And so his resume was like, I was a camp counselor, and you know, that was some outdoor stuff. And I worked for a horse association, and I ran track, and I was on student council. And I started looking in the description, and I'm like, I don't see track anywhere in the job description, or horses, or counselor. I mean, I see Spanish. Okay, I saw Spanish a little bit at the very, very bottom of your resume. So I don't know. I wasn't thinking this resume was going to make it. And I looked at him and I said, how bad do you want this? And he looked at me and said, I really, really want to do this. And I was like, no, dude, how bad do you really want this? And he goes, bad. Okay, let's take a serious run at this thing. And so I probably spent 2.5 hours talking with him. I asked him a bunch of questions. He gave me a bunch of answers. The whole time I'm scribbling furiously. And in the end, we came up with that resume. So a couple things about this resume, and the really horrible resume next to it. Just take a second and just look at that for a second. What do you think are some of the main differences here? I mean, besides the big green lizard on top.
It's a lot more detailed and like specific to what he's applying for.
Yeah. Yep. You know, they needed travel experience, and looking at his resume, there was exactly 0 traveling experience. So it's game over at that point. And in talking with him, I'm like, dude, have you ever gone anywhere? He's like, well, yeah, I've been all over the world a few times. You know, my family vacations a lot, and I've done all kinds of amazing things. I was like, well, we're going to have to find a way to build that into your resume, because that's something they really wanted. And so we built a section called conservation and travel experience, because they need someone with travel experience who has conservation experience as well. He had it, he just didn't say it. So if I put my resume in, chances are Michael is a way better candidate than I am for this, but I know I could have beat him out for this opportunity. Not because I'm better, but because I would articulate my value better than he did. That's how the game works. And so my job is to help this student articulate his value in a way that he smokes everybody on the way to getting exactly what he wants. So summary of qualifications, we gave them exactly the key components they're looking for. Conservation, travel, you bet. And then we moved the vocabulary of his industry into this resume, which is really important. You know, so domestic travel, I had to look this up. You know, he's been to Maine, Vermont. I don't even know what the trees up there are called, but I can Google, right? So deciduous and boreal forests in Maine and Vermont, that's what they call it. And that's what a biologist would call it. They don't say a bunch of trees up in the Northeast, they say boreal forests. So I'm using the vocabulary of their world. He's been to Florida, all right, Southern Everglades. I had to kind of look that up. Is the Everglades or Southern, what are the Ozarks? You know, coastal regions, tall, short grass prairie ecosystem of the US. That's because he went cross country with his folks once and went through the prairie. Been to Hawaii, blah, blah, blah. Where do you go? Yellowstone. So, you know, I'm like, what are the words out there that conservationists use to describe Yellowstone Park? Hydrothermal, vegetation, wildlife ecosystem. We're driving the vocabulary of that world into this resume. It makes him sound like he belongs in that world, not I'm a college student hoping to get into that world. And then the list goes kind of on and on. Any guesses of why we threw a lizard at the top?
It's unique.
Ah, bingo, right? That is the lizard. This lizard only lives on this island. That's it, nowhere else on planet Earth. We were able to figure that out. Who else knows that that's the lizard?
People hiring him.
You got it. And how many other candidates threw the lizard on their resume, do you think? 0. And he got it, right? He blew everyone away. He wasn't even remotely qualified on paper to begin with. Like he wasn't going to be old enough to even try this for 4 years. And he blew everybody away because of the resume. And it's because he figured out what his future demanded from him. And he figured out what his value was relative to that future. And he drove it straight into the center of that target. The person down there literally had no choice but to take him. There was no way you pass this up because he gave them exactly what they wanted for, or what they wanted. So great stuff. It's an example of how to make this work. Another quick example. There's a company, Enterprise Holdings. They hire more of our students. You know, Enterprise Rent-A-Car. They hire more of our students for manager and corporate positions from SUNY Oswego than any college anywhere in the Northeast. We lead the pack with this company. So they're always very interested in us, and they take a lot of our graduates, and they're really pretty cool careers. So I worked with a student. She wanted to work for Enterprise, and you know, she showed me a resume and it was not exactly where it needed to be. I said, well, it's because you simply wrote what you did, not write what you did that they care about. Because some of the stuff you're talking about, nobody cares. You've got to only talk about the things they care about. And so the first step in this, again, is what do you care about? If you get that wrong, if you haven't done that step, you're just shooting in the dark. Maybe you hit the target, probably not. So that's what Enterprise cares about. It's ripped right off their website. The things you will be doing: customer service, sales and marketing, finance and operations. Pretty simple. They tell you right on the website. And so we developed this as a secondary piece to the resume. And so we broke her resume up into 4 different sections. Those 4 sections being exactly what they say the position requires. And we actually stole the graphics right off their website. If you can see, we built those into those circles. We did a summary on the side. We broke up all of her experience across everything she'd ever done into customer service. And everything related to finance, we drove in that box. What she did was say, I know what you want. I've done my homework. I think it's a great match. And I'm going to make it really, really easy for you to see what a perfect match this is to bring me on as a manager. And any manager that gets one of these and goes, yeah, okay, when can we interview, right? You just can't hardly say no to this stuff. So make it easy for them to find your value. If you make it hard, if I have to hunt and peck through a resume to figure out your value, I'm just not going to. And Joe's been in this position too, but if you're on the other side of the table, and some of you may have been already, and you're looking at 47 resumes and it's 8 o'clock at night and you've got to figure out who you want to interview in the next couple of days, you're not going to spend, literally 5, 7, 8 seconds. If you can't find it in that time period, you're tired, right? You're just human. You're going to the next resume. So make it super simple to see your value. Another company, well known on our campus, Target Corporation. I just grabbed these because they're such good examples. So Vanessa came to me one day and she's like, I would like to work for Target. And she actually ultimately wanted to work at their corporate headquarters in Minneapolis, which is an amazing facility. Target is a crazy, amazing company. I've been out to their corporate headquarters and spent days out there just kind of going top to bottom through their organization. And they're really pretty impressive. And she wanted to work for Target. And Target managers, believe it or not, any idea what Target managers make in terms of salary, like right here in Little Syracuse? Any guesses? How many people say more than $40,000 a year? How many people say more than 50,000? More than 60,000? Ooh, we've more than 70,000. Oh, we've hit the ceiling. Yeah, so you get out of college and 75, Meredith is kicking in with 75. All right, I should start. 80, Sonia, nice. Yeah, if you graduate out of college at the ripe old age of 22, probably by the time you are 26 or 27, you are well into 6 figures with Target. That's their projected. Like if you're not making 6 figures at that point, something's gone wrong and they send you back to like Target 101 school or something. But that's their financial projection for you, and it goes up from there. If you're in a bigger market, your salary is obviously bigger, but Target, they have multiple manager positions in that company, and it's a big responsibility. You're supervising 200 people, 100,000 square feet of merchandise, millions of dollars of stuff, and they're going to pay you accordingly. This is corporate America, which is not a bad gig sometimes. But because they do that, they can be pretty darn picky about who they bring on. And it's multiple interviews to get a job offer at something like Target as a manager. I think 3 or 4 at the very least, with increasing levels of stress along the way. And so Vanessa, she was like, I really want to work for Target. Love the company, love Target. I want to be a manager. And I looked at the resume. I was like, never going to happen with this resume. In 1,000 years, never going to happen. I mean, I didn't really say it like that, but between all of you and me, never going to happen. And I said, Vanessa, how bad do you want to work for Target? She's like, Gary, I want to work for this company real bad. I was like, okay, but it's going to be an overhaul, obviously, because we can submit this, but it won't go anywhere. And so the question is, what? What do we start with? Any guesses?
Make her job descriptions more detailed.
Yeah, you're kind of right there. It's, what does Target want? I mean, you can write a resume just like Vanessa put this resume together, and nobody cares about what's on this resume because, among other things, Target does not need a dance instructor. And Target doesn't need you, to prepare takeout orders, right? And this is what you're saying you're good at. This is what you're saying you can do. Okay, it's what you've done. Problem is your future doesn't care. So you've got to reframe how you're articulating what you've done in a way that they will see the value. Short of that, they're going to be like, no, sorry, we're full with dance instructors. We've got, other jobs. So we had to kind of redo this whole resume. And so we came up with, yeah.
I just have a quick question. So what, like with Vanessa, like what does she do have to like change it up? Because like if that's all she's good at, like what do you want to like, what does she have to do to like prove like she's capable working for Target?
You
I feel like the
got it.
problem is that she hasn't even articulated what she's good at. She just put like basic like points on there. Like she hasn't really talked about what she can offer.
Yeah, great question, by the way. And I'm going to show you the reframed resume that we did with Vanessa. What she had to do is figure out what Target wanted. What are their priorities? What are their values? What's that company all about? What's the position expect her to do and be good at? Then she had to go back to things like dance instructor. And we just asked the question, okay, so you were a dance instructor. Did you do anything in this entire job that relates to this skill set Target is looking for, right? We defined that target. We have the skill set Target needs. We wrote it down. We have the target. The question was, what did you do as a dance instructor that Target cares about? Because it's not teaching dance. So what is it? And that was a conversation. I asked some questions. She came up with some answers. I did a lot of scribbling. And in the end, we came up with some really cool bullet statements that put her on track to be competitive for Target. So it always starts with the end. What do they want? And then it comes back to the present day. What do I have that relates to what they want? Like what's the worst summer job anybody's had? Any suggestions here? You can throw it in the chat box, but just kind of like some horrible summer job, the likes of which you're like, this is why I'm in college, because I'm never going to do this again. Any suggestions?
Yeah, I got one.
Yeah.
I worked at Lowe's for a summer and that was pretty horrendous.
Lowe's, oh man, see, I would have been like Lowe's. All right, I love Lowe's, but maybe
There's a lot of
not
watery
working.
plants.
Oh, okay, I'm with you. Yeah, so watering plants at Lowe's. Any other suggestions out there?
Summer camp counselor during COVID-19.
Oh, that's horrible. Jeez. Okay. Gear up,
Retirement
kids.
home
Today
during
we're going to do
COVID-19.
nothing. What was that?
Retirement home during COVID-19.
Okay, that's even worse. Wow, Lowe's is starting to sound pretty good there.
I've actually been a summer camp counselor and worked at a retirement home during COVID-19, so I've had all three.
Nice. Okay. Very good. Yeah, you, John, dude. So in all of those jobs,
So I just wanted to say I actually applied to Target as a cashier a month or two ago, and I had the skills, like I sent in my resume and everything else, and they said I wasn't qualified. And I worked at Home Depot before as a cashier, which I don't get how I'm not qualified. I was a cashier and I was applying for a cashier at Target. So what makes me not qualified, which I am so confused.
yeah, I mean, it's hard to say without looking at your resume, the job description, and all of that. But something, I mean, if you got through the resume piece and they interviewed you, something in the interview shut you down. If you didn't give an interview, then probably something in the resume shut you down. So we'd have to kind of pick that apart a little bit. Yep.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They never.
Oh, I'm sorry. Would you recommend using like the company colors on your resume? Because I noticed like you did that kind of on the last one, and then she has the red trim around here.
So there's a few fields where I think that's okay. If you want to be an accountant for PricewaterhouseCoopers, I don't think you want to get too cute on a resume, like no lizards at all, right? But it worked to put a lizard on that resume because it matched the culture. I'm going to show you Target's revamped resume here, and you can tell me without even reading it, where does Vanessa want to work? Vanessa wants to work at Target. And we know that without reading a word on this resume. So you got to look at the culture of the organization. If you get a sense that that's okay, I think you can go ahead. Anything you do on a resume has to be fairly subtle. We added some red highlights in this resume because we knew Target was red. They know they're red. We know they're red. It's just, you know, that's what it is. The Target circle in the upper right, that's way more diffuse in real life. I had to bring it out so you could see it a little bit more, but you can barely make it out in the background. But it's subtle, and that's where you want these things. Giant lizard notwithstanding, most things on a resume like this, you kind of want subtle because you don't want to distract from the most important thing on this resume, which is your content. But if you can brand your resume a little bit, if it's appropriate, if the culture supports that, and if you're not quite sure if it does or not, ask around. I will certainly dig into any company out there and give you my 2 cents. Joe is great at doing that, and he can help you figure out whether that's appropriate or not. But little things like that start creating a little more distance between you and everybody else. For example.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I'm going to be mostly applying to marketing jobs. Now, marketing is a creative field, but it is a business field as well. So would you recommend going more like with this route, or it just depends on the company? Because there's, you know what I mean? Like some people could say you're not creative enough, and then some people could say this is too much, not professional.
Right. It's a great question, and it's almost on an individual basis. You know, maybe the one exception is if you are going into graphic design, those resumes need to demonstrate your skill set. You know, it can't be like a resume for an accounting firm because it's like, really, this is it. But other than that, you really have to kind of take a look at each company and what you can do to kind of subtly match the vibe of your resume with their colors, their theme, their priorities. And again, I'm showing you more dramatic examples of how you can tailor a resume. Not every resume has to have like the circle on it or the lizard or the different colors. In fact, most don't. But it's a way of demonstrating, you know what they're all about. You've done the homework and you're going to do more than everybody else to match that up.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yep. So I'd be happy to look at any company out there and give you my 2 cents on that.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a question about under the education section, how you wrote or had her write out the whole name and then student in parentheses. Is that like the most current and best way to list it on resumes? Because I never know which version to put.
Right. Yeah. Let me sleep better tonight knowing that most employers could care less how you say the name of your school as long as they understand it. So don't get too stressed out about that. State University of New York is fine. SUNY works, certainly within New York. You know, you start getting into like, I don't know, Oklahoma, and they'll be like, what's a SUNY? You know, they might not know that it's a state university system and all that. So you might write that out, which is a way to think about all of this. You know, we can put GPA on a resume because almost universally that means grade point average. So things that are completely obvious, you can kind of break down into the acronym. And SUNY is obvious in New York, at least. If people aren't going to understand something, if you put it on your resume, they don't get it, it has no value, it's wasting space. In fact, it's wasting time because they're like, what is a SUNY? SUNY, maybe I'll Google SUNY Oswego, and then they'll figure it out. And by then they're just torqued off. So yeah, it's a great question. Most people don't care as long as they understand what you're talking about.
Garry, are there still employers that care to have a GPA on the resume?
Yeah, you know, it's industry specific. For example, most accounting firms, if you don't have a resume that has your GPA, they're not going to look at anything else on the resume. It just gets filed. Or a certain GPA, like PricewaterhouseCoopers, one of the big four. You know, if your resume is anything below a 3.5, 3.6, they don't even bother reading what you bring to the table in terms of experience. Most other fields, they see resume as one piece of many pieces that make up your candidacy, which, Joe, great question. It kind of begs the question, so do I put it on there or not? If it's really good, do I put it on there? If it's bad, do I leave it off? What do I do if it's in the middle? Where's that breaking point? Any guesses on that, folks?
So let me give you a little scenario here. So, you know, most, and this applies, PR, journalism, marketing is very applied. So you could have a student who is not really good at tests and things like that, but has a lot of really great applied experience and can apply the work, but might not be a good tester, or has had me as a professor. You know, whenever I've been in the room looking at resumes of candidates, it's always been, we're looking at the experience or what they've done. And does that apply to what we need? Do they fit with the team? Things like that. We've never cared what anyone's GPA was while they were in college.
Yep.
I usually tell students to take it off their resume when I look at resumes, just because of that.
Yep. Unless it's amazing. You know, if you've got a really high GPA, dean's list, president's list, and all of that, especially if you don't have a lot of experience on your resume, that can explain some of that because you were hitting the books really hard. Or it does show your ability to quickly learn, disseminate, regurgitate information, and move on to the next thing. So if it's a great GPA, it's worth considering. If it's a lousy GPA, 100% leave it off.
Oh,
you know, there's always that.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry. If you were inducted into like multiple honor societies, right? And you say like inductee of blah, 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 blah. Do you still put the GPA, or would that be too repetitive because you're stating obviously you have a good GPA if you're in high honor societies?
Yeah, I think it depends. You know, it's, you know, as Joe makes the point, if they're not really concerned with your GPA, and many fields aren't at this point, then putting the fact that you've been inducted into this, particularly if it was a competitive process, I think says everything they need to know about that without the GPA.
The only thing I would suggest in that is, what is the honor society? So what is the one in comm studies? Phi Beta Lambda? I know it's something Lambda. I was not a comm studies person in my undergrad, so I never knew what it was to begin with. But if you have all of those, Alexa, you might want to put like honor society for marketing, honor society for business, because the average person reading it isn't going to know what that is.
Right.
And you don't want them to think it's like, I drink a keg of honor society, right? It's just like, you just kind of want to steer that thought process for them.
Yeah, especially with Greek honor societies, they tend to get confused with Greek associations.
Yes.
Yep. And depending on the, you know, the hiring manager and their experience in college, that's either a positive thing or it's a horrible thing. And, you know, you don't want to randomly land on one side of that fence.
I just wanted to make a quick note. My uncle does a lot of hiring at Paychex, and we just had a discussion, and he made the comment that if your GPA isn't on your resume, it's a red flag for him, because for him that means it's probably not great, and then he will ask, why isn't it on there, and why is it not great? So I guess, but Paychex is sales and insurance and stuff like that, so I guess it really just does matter on the industry. And so how would you go about figuring out, you know, industry wise, what to do with that?
Yeah, it's a little tough to figure that out. Certainly if they request that you put your GPA on your resume, I think you probably should, because if you don't, then you're like, can you just follow directions? I guess not. Okay, so next, right? And then you get down to, well, when do you put it on and when do you not put it on? And you know, the common break point is 3.0. If it's above a 3, you put it on. If it's below a 3, you leave it off. Who knows? You know, if it's 3.2 and you're in accounting, I think you're dead, right? But a 3.2 in my major as an undergrad in psychology, totally respectable, because it's not about the GPA. It's about what you know, what you've done, how you apply it. You know, one way, you know, if you start putting something that starts with a T on your resume instead of a F, it tends to have a little less of a positive connotation, but if it is lower than you want, you've got to explain that on a resume so it's not a concern. And I've known students to put at the top of their resume, you know, if they kind of work their way through school, summer jobs, their tuition, books and everything, and they're financing that, whether it's through jobs or loans that they will pay back at some point, you know, they can put at the top, personally financed 75% of all educational expenses, or 80 or 90 or whatever it is. And that says something about, you know, you're going to class, you've been involved, you did internships, and you're putting yourself through school. Yeah, okay, I don't have a 3.9, but that'll get me past that a little bit. Great way to figure that out is jump on LinkedIn, grab some alums who work for the company and get a sense of how important that is. You know, our alums are fantastic at giving some great advice and suggestions like that. So, yep, it's a tricky one. It's a tricky one, but I'm happy to look at anything. It's all relative. A resume is like a piece of real estate. You know, you've only got so much to work with. You've got to figure out what you can do with that space to make it as valuable as possible. And sometimes it's GPA, sometimes experience or whatever. So, and Vanessa, she had to figure out how to like relate dance to manager at Target. And so this kind of gets back to this earlier example of, you know, if you look at dance instructor, why do you think Vanessa 1, 2, 3, 4 words in puts the word fun on her resume?
That's their terminology for Target.
Perfect. That is their terminology. At the point where she wrote this, Target's mantra on their website, all over their recruiting materials, Target is fast, fun, and friendly. If Vanessa doesn't figure out how to bring the fun on this resume, she probably doesn't get hired. And so she did that throughout the entire resume, branded it a little bit for the company. And we had a job fair on campus in the Marano Campus Center gym. I watched this happen. She walked up to the recruiter and handed them this resume. And I knew it was going to happen. So I was like on the side just watching this unfold. And they looked at the resume and they looked behind to the person behind them who also worked for Target. And they was like, look at this. And the person behind them went, holy cow, grabbed a clipboard, walked over to Vanessa and said, I want to interview you tomorrow morning at 10. And they hadn't even read her resume. They just looked at her resume and knew that she put more effort and time into matching what she has against what they need than anybody in that entire gym for 2 hours straight. The 400 students they talked to, Vanessa was at the top of the list because she articulated her value better. Was she the most qualified person that went for that job that night of all of our students? No way. No way. But she proved to them that she was, and that's all she needed to do. And that's the power of this document, I think, in a lot of ways. A couple more examples, and then I'll move on real quick. Anybody ever worked for Subway, like Subway sandwiches? Yeah, hilarious story. When my daughter turned 16, I was trying to get her to get a part-time job, and we did all kinds of research that I won't bore you with because we're almost out of time. They call themselves sandwich artists. And we know that because we did all of our research. And so we came up with the job description. Yep, it's a sandwich artist, which is maybe the dorkiest thing I've ever heard. But her cover letter started like that. And I basically made her do this because she really didn't want to. But I said, you do this and this job is yours. Because no one's going to write a cover letter resume to get a job at Subway, and no one's going to start their cover letter like this. Long story short, long, really funny story short, she of course got the job offer. Like she didn't even interview. They said, I'm hiring you because I love this cover letter. This tells me that you want to work here. Done. The concept is the same, whether it's Subway, an accounting firm, a public relations agency, the process is the same. Know what they're looking for, give them what they're looking for, and you will beat people all day long in this resume game. NACE competencies, Employers want these competencies. If nothing else, if you can't figure anything else about what they're looking for, drive these concepts into your resume. Because across the board, among just about every industry out there, this is what they want you to bring to the table. So going back, I'm happy to share this. I can get any of this to Kayla. She can kick it out or whatever too. But going back, a great resume is not thinking about what are my margins, what font size. None of that matters if you are not giving them what they're hungry for. You can have the most beautiful resume ever, and no one will care if you're talking about teaching dance class and going for a job at Target. Everything has to do with connecting the dots for the employer and making it easy for them to see why they should hire you for the position they have. It is totally all about them. Think about it as like not your resume. If you're going to go for a job with an agency, it's their resume. You just need to write it for them. And if you take a look at it that way, you just can't lose. And so you got to go all the way back to the beginning, wonder what they're looking for, do an inventory about what you have to offer. What have you got? You've got all kinds of great stuff. And then you've got this set of experiences over here that are like, yeah, so I worked in fast food because like I need to buy books to get or whatever. I need to transfer that, convert it over. In the end, you've got to figure out what your value is and then figure out what's missing. If they need you to have a skill and you don't have it, you've got to get it or you're not going to get the job. And so that middle gap analysis in there is essentially your homework. And the sooner you figure out what your future target looks like, the sooner you can figure out where the gaps exist in your ideal candidacy. And then you go after it like tomorrow. And there's so many interesting ways to kind of figure that out. I'm going to skip through a couple things here, like LinkedIn Learning. I mean, jump on LinkedIn Learning. It's free for you as a SUNY Oswego student. Once you leave college, not free anymore. And there's all kinds of things you can do to develop a lot of micro credentials and enhance your candidacy and brand. I'm having students now, if they do LinkedIn Learning courses, you're not quite sure what that means, dive into LinkedIn. We can help you. We've got a whole team there that can work with you on this. These micro credential courses can be really interesting. You complete these courses, they're all video. It shows up on your LinkedIn profile. And now students are doing this so much, I'm suggesting they build in a LinkedIn micro credentials section on their website or on their resume that lists the credentials they've finished through LinkedIn. And that's all good because all of these words you want on your resume. So it could be really interesting. And then Parker Dewey is a great way to bump up your skills and experience in project-based paid positions while you're in college. And if you've never heard of them, they're on our website too. Pretty cool company.
Garry, for any students that take classes with me, there's usually a few of the LinkedIn Learning certificates they have to complete as part of their coursework. So,
bless your heart, Joe. That's awesome. Yep, I wish everybody would do that. It's just a wonderful compliment to what our faculty do for our students, and it really bumps you out there. So yeah, good stuff. There are lots of places to find opportunity, like tens of thousands of opportunities in your field. There's no lack of internships and jobs, trust me. These are some of the bigger places you can look that we subscribe to. Indeed is a commercial vendor, but they're probably the biggest dog out there right now. Handshake and Career Shift, there's stuff we pay money for to give you access. And then, don't forget the professional associations. I always encourage students, if you want to learn about an organization, get on the PRSSA website and, email. And, if you've not been here, it's email the Vice President of Member Services, start that conversation. Like, why should I join your organization? Make them sell it to you, and that's their job, they will. Now you ask a follow-up question, they give you a follow-up answer. You have a relationship with someone who's the vice president on a board of a major organization who knows your name. and you give it a couple of weeks and you come back with another question like, hey, thank you so much. I did actually go ahead and join this association and I'm loving every bit of it. I did think of one other comment or question and I'd love your thoughts on this. Keep that relationship warm. Ask them to introduce you to somebody else. That's an easy way to start to move in to a profession, is people who have a vested interest in having you join, and people who are in charge of member services for an organization. It's what they do. You've already got them in your corner and they don't even know it. And then I'd say, finally, that's the deal. If you hang out in the gooey, comfortable middle zone of life, you're probably not going to grow much. You're probably not going to experience much. I'd say if there's any way, get out there on the edge of things and take risks, make mistakes, dare to kind of get out there on the plank a little bit. That's where the difference is made. So if it takes, getting a hold of me or somebody else to take a look at that resume and really do a deep dive into how we can specialize this, let's just do that. If you're wondering, yeah, short of like, okay, I've been on Handshake, I couldn't find anything there. Anything else? Yeah, like 1,000 things else that I could suggest. Reach out, raise your hand, dive into this process. Every single one of you, and I don't even know most of you, I know every single one of you by virtue of the fact that you go to SUNY Oswego, you're under the care of people like Joe and other faculty. You're on your game. And it's just a matter of framing your value better than everybody else frames theirs. And that's where we come in. We're really good at making you better than everybody else in this process. A resume is kind of your calling card. That's the first piece, but there's so many other pieces that we can wrap into this that I won't go into, but it's what we do. So if there's something we can do to help, please reach out.
Thank you so much, Garry. I know that we're a little past time, but I think all of that was just amazing information. I took a ton of notes, and I would also love to connect with you after this to go over some stuff for the future. But thank you so much. Can you give us, these students, a way of contacting you, maybe your email or how to set up an appointment with you?
Yeah, you bet. You can find us online. Pretty much that's the only place you can find us for obvious reasons. But if you go to our website, all of our career coaches are online. We're in Handshake. That's how you make appointments with us. So just log into your account, go to the Career Center inside of Handshake, and you'll find lots of things, including how to reach us and make an appointment. Yep.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah.
So if anybody does have any questions, as long as Garry's okay, you can stick around. But if not, I think that's all we have for you tonight. If you have any questions later, like Garry said, you can reach out, set up an appointment. And yeah, so thanks so much for coming. Just a reminder that we do not have a meeting next week because it is Thanksgiving. So happy Thanksgiving, everyone. Yeah. Thank you for coming.
Right, great meeting everybody, and thank you for the comments in the chat. I love some of your comments about society capital and all that. So great stuff. You guys are on the ball. This college has great faith in you. Hang in there.
Thanks.